Okay, so further to the last couple videos, I thought I would talk about, here's that cat again, talk about practices or practices or inquiries that were happening or being done throughout the whole kind of story I told there. I omitted a lot of the experiences that I had throughout this whole thing, because I didn't want people to fixate on experiences or try and replicate that in their own experience, because it's not my experiences specific to me as an individual going through this aren't really relevant. I also omitted the mushroom thing for a long time, but it seemed to confirm in an extreme way what was already happening. So don't think that the psychedelics thing triggered this or caused it. It was just something that I found to be useful, and it clarified a lot of what was going on already. I also realised that I have the reason I've been, not really directly talking about or pointing to the no self thing is because in that last video I did get quite emotional. There was a lot of emotions there talking about that, and so that means clearly there's still some unraveling there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with these emotions moving as they do, but that very deep and fundamental attachment to there even being something here, that taking that position to experience a real world, a real me in it, and a real me in my story and my ideas about life and death and so on, that's not there in the way that it was believed to be. There's a very deep emotional accumulation and attachment to that does move over time, and sometimes it comes up, and so maybe I was avoiding that because it's still quite there's still quite a lot of emotion moving out from that realisation, and it seems to just go on the way it does. And anyway, so also the way that this played out for me is specific to this experience of David. So your experience might be different. Those of you who know what I was talking about in the first video that feel that will have different ways of describing it, and we have different flavours of a story, that versions of that story that they would describe going through this, and it might sound completely different, but so just keep that in mind. So the practices that I did basically were a form of disidentification from thoughts. So I did that by looking at the direct thought experience, being aware that there is a thought experience, rather than being immersed in the thought experience and not even knowing that you're thinking, and in which sense the thoughts are completely believable, completely real. Taking a step back, so sometimes you notice you're thinking, you're quite aware of the thought experience, but this way, by taking a step out of that in a sense, and that kind of happens randomly. So you might notice you're lost in a thought stream, and then that's like it comes out of the blue. That's an awakening. You notice that, and then you kind of, it feels like you wake up out of it, and then you're more aware of the thought experience directly, in the timeless appearance as it appears now. So doing that enough, well, I noticed it got to the point where I could maintain that openness, maintain that attentiveness on the thought space, and then you can then investigate what the thought is. So it brings you closer to the more direct thought experience, and then you investigate what it feels like to be me experiencing thoughts. What is this thinker? What is this one I call myself that's aware, that's experiencing thoughts? And that's not really answered in an objective thought way, but you hear a lot, turn the attention around, or awareness of awareness. In looking at the thoughts that way, you become aware of their substance. They're made of awake awareness. They're only known as a thought experience because of this infinite knowingness. Everything in your experience is aware, or you are aware of. It knows, it's a knowingness, it knows itself. So we become more aware of that. And the other practice I did was self-inquiry. So working in that kind of thought space. And in that, just whenever the thought appears, you'll notice that when you focus on that thought, even if you try and enlarge the thought or merge with the thought or whatever, you notice that it dissolves. So then there's a bit of quietness, and in that quietness, you can then either, you can use thought to ask the question, but it's more, after a while it becomes more felt, a question more felt, so you don't need to verbally ask the question. The self-inquiry is, what am I, or who am I, or what is it that feels like me? What am I here that's aware of this thought experience? What is that? So then we look for the identity of what I feel like I am. But we don't think about it. It's not something that clarifies as a thought. So doing this, we start to notice that we might get into a kind of position of the watcher, or the big subject that is aware of all this, and we start to notice that, sorry, I need to cramp my back. We might notice that the thoughts appear automatically, and there's a lot of thoughts that we believed. There are some more believable thoughts that appear, that have more pull to them and suck you in a bit harder. But that space is created, and then when we ask these questions, or when we use this inquiry, we let the experience of what is here confirm the answer, or answer the question. And it's like it's not a conceptual answer. So any other thought that comes up, that's not it. We recognize it and release it, and come back to the felt sense of what you are. For me, I would describe it in a sense that I noticed that assumed subject that felt like me was a thought, but it wasn't the normal kind of thought. It was suggested in the content, or in the context of the thought stream, in its content. I guess you could say at that point, when the assumption of that me as a thinker was exposed to just be a transient thought that's not here all the time, what is here all the time became clear. And that's what I was describing in the first Awakening Story video. So that was the practice, inquiry. And the other practice that I did was keeping the attention on the present moment, I guess you could say, or direct experience. And I did that through walking, and something that was occupying my attention in a way that it was easy to keep attention on the immediate reality. It wasn't a heady thing, it was a physical, sensory thing that I was doing, that I felt relaxed, and that was kind of like my anchor point, where I would keep coming back to that, and then I'd still be aware of this thought space that is indistinguishable from all this, and I would just watch. And at some point something clarified, and it clarified because what was obstructing it fell away in its reality. It's very hard to talk about that, but it's a very simple thing, and it's not an experience you're going to have in the future. That's why in the first video I posted here, I said, is this it? Is this what enlightenment is? Because it was so hilariously obvious and simple, and too it was too close. It wasn't distant. It wasn't like something in the future. It was something that was very close. Not something else out there, or something in the future, or something that's going to happen as an objective experience. It was transcendent and inclusive of all of that. So once that clarifies, once there's less this belief in that subject, such that the thoughts aren't sticky anymore, you're not fighting with thoughts. You I guess you could say what you are, or you could say you have access to, but what you are at an essential level is, it becomes obvious. So the access is to that. It's not a state, but the access to that, say, experience is in everything. It's everywhere. It's not limited. You don't have to chase it anymore as something you're going to get. In that simplicity, in that pure awake knowingness, the second part of this was investigating what I call the augmentations, or the spatial assumptions, that make this experience physically look like I am a body separate here in this world, separate from the world out there. I am distinct. This is when it starts to become quite visceral, and what it did for me, I don't know if it does for other people, and I had to deal with the physical sensation, the motion sensations in the body that had been accumulated, and that I was ignoring by using this assumption of the subject looking out, always focusing on thoughts and managing everything. So the augmentations were what started it for me was, we say Eckhart Tolle said, when you appreciate a flower, the flower doesn't have eyes. It appreciates itself through you. So there's like a thinning of the boundary of separation, in that you're looking at the flower's looking at itself through your eyes. It's a symbiotic type thing. That's what kind of was the entry point for me. And why that's so potent is because it questions this assumption of a subject here looking out, space out there, and then hit the sight hitting an object over there, and that being a separate, distinct object. That's what you want to investigate. And you see directly in the experience the knowingness that you've already recognized as that, because you can embody that knowingness now as that. Is that the experience? Does that knowingness inherently have in it separation in the senses? And this is a very, very simple, and when it clarifies, again, obvious thing, but what prevents us from clarifying that obstruction is the mental narrative. There's an assumption there. It's a thought assumption, but the going into the head and trying to explain things in any way, you've already missed it. From, let's say, like a space of stillness, you can look and you can investigate the assumption of the subject here and the object out there. So you can choose an object, and then you can maybe ask, where is the boundary between the knowingness of that, the awareness of that, and the appearance itself? Is there any perceivable separation in the looking between a me here and the seen object out there? Is there actually am I actually perceiving any space between these two in the looking? Or is the space an assumption? That this might sound crazy to suggest this, that I obviously know that's over there and there's space in between, that's obvious. Like, it'd be crazy to think that object over there being seen isn't over there, it's over here, but that's what we're pointing at. Is it over there? Does the awareness of it say that it's over there? The direct experience? Where are you experiencing that? And then where are you, the subject that we have assumed is looking out? That's what we're investigating. So you can trace a line if you want. You can look at the object and you can trace a line directly back, immediately in a linear fashion, from the object back to the subject, and see if that's even possible. Like, I mean, you can do that in imagination, but in the direct experience, is there a distinct traceable line that you can follow back that moves through the space? Or are you aware of it here, or are you aware of it over there? Is it either of those? That's what we're asking. This can be easier with the sound, so we close our eyes and we take in the totality of the sound experience, and then we look for augmentations and assumptions. So the augmentation might be that I hear a car going down the road, there's an image of a car, there's a label of a car, and there's a suggestion that it's over there and I'm here. In the actual sound experience, where is the sound? And where is the awareness of it? And are they separate? Where is the hearer of the sound? And where is the sound itself in the awareness of it, in the experience of the knowingness of that as it appears? Is the one aware of it, hearing it separate from the sound? What are we using to make it look like that sound is distinct? That it's a car sound, and I know that, and it's over there. I would suggest that it's an augmentation of thought and assumption. So then we can listen to all the sounds and ask, in the experience of sound, are there separate sounds? What do we have to reference or use to make it look like there are separate sounds, and they're out there and I'm in here? It might look like there's a space. You might be mapping the space in your head. Is that spatial map inherent in the sound? When this clarifies, it's not something you can describe, because I look at that red car over there and I can see it's over there. I can say I'm aware of it over there and here, and neither in both. I can say that it's aware of itself where it is, which is indescribable where it is, because there's no space in between. There's no point where I start back here, so that it just goes on infinitely. So you can't really describe it when this clarifies, but you can, like, I can point to the obstructions. And then someone was asking us recently, you can investigate the boundary between the senses. So is there a boundary between the sound and the seen? It might seem obvious that these senses are different and they're distinct and they're separate. But in this, the immediate simultaneousness of it, the immediate awareness of it, are those sounds separate? Can we find an experience boundary or a threshold or a limit or a separation between the two. To me, it's obviously clear that that doesn't exist. But for some of you who are listening to this, it might be that, like, obviously sound and the seeing are different. There's one that I did where you close your eyes, you listen to the sound. I'm going to put my hands in my lap. I'm going to move my hands up and down. And I'm going to hear the sound of that coming from, apparently, my hands moving up and down. I'm going to feel the vibrations of that sound. The vibrations of the hands moving up and down. All little vibrations, and they're kind of in sync with the sound. And then I'm going to experience the sound and the sensations as a single experience. So those little sensations make the sound, and the sound makes those little sensations. In the experience, there's no real distinction between the two. They merge together. They become feeling sound or sound feeling. And that can make it a bit easier to see that there isn't a distinction there, that it's just made by the mind, this distinction. And then we can do it with sound and sight. So I'm going to flick this thing, and I can sense, I can see and feel that the sound is coming from there, and I can see the associated image of that happening. So then, are they separate? In that one event, in that one experience, that, am I experiencing a separate sight and a separate sound, or are they together? So investigating any separation in the sensed experience, and then seeing what the mind is doing to augment separation onto that and make it look like things are separate. Another one is exploring inherent points of view. So what am I assuming about my experience of myself and the experience of the world? What am I assuming there? The way it is. If I feel like there's a way it is, then what am I referencing to experience that as real? And then when we are connected to direct experience, we can then watch for the creation of time, then the creation of the solidity of the world. So I know I drive here, I'm going to get out my car, and this area that I'm in, the assumption would be, if I was identifying with this augmentation, that this still exists when I leave and walk down the road. And I've got a map in my head of when I walk down the road, I turn, I know what it's going to look like. So there, out with this immediate experience, the limits of this, there's the assumption of another road and the whole world out there. So that makes my experience seem small, because I've mapped out this whole big world out there, and I assume that this stays here when I leave. But when we're tuned into this, we can then see that what we're assuming about the nature of reality, space and time, that when I walk down there, and this disappears into nothing from the point of view of my experience. I don't move through the world moves through me. So I am the world. So I walk down there, and that street appears out of nothing, and this street disappears into nothingness in a bizarrely mysterious way. My assumption of time is the only thing that makes it look like there's still a thing here, independent of me when I walk around there. So in your experience, what you are is creating reality out of nothing, an impermanent way, and it disappears into nothingness as well if we're in direct experience. So investigating that as well, and then also becoming aware of, you'll become more aware of emotions, becoming aware of the felt visceral sensation of emotions as they appear, and then watching for thought structures or thought functions that appear with the intention of avoiding that sensation. And once we get more direct with sensation, we get more direct with emotion. So watching for that attempt to control or avoid that emotion or not feel it, which doesn't work anyway, and then directing attention straight into the felt visceral experience of emotion and seeing what are the boundaries to this. Forgetting the reason for it and the cause and the story, what are the boundaries to this emotion? Bring the emotion up into the infinity, into what you know yourself to be, infinite. Make it as infinite as possible. Orient yourself directly into it and feel as much as possible. That way the story, the augmentations around emotion, the structures there in mind will be noticed, and when they're noticed they dissolve, and that emotion's almost freed up into non-dual infinity. So those are the basic practices that I would describe that I did throughout the awakening thing, and a lot of it's very intuitive. You feel your way through this at a certain point, and that intuition kind of takes over. So the further into this you get, the pressure's off in terms of control, but that doesn't mean you don't have to still experience intense emotions and sensations. So that'll do for now. Let me know your practices in the comments, and if that helped, and I'll talk to you next time.